A golden thumb to the director of the Big Fan, Rob Siegel. And this is Nate Cohen, the director of the Film Festival of Ebertfest. Roger's sitting back there, and he wants you to know that this is the golden thumb that we give out to our filmmakers. And we say it's a cast of Roger's thumb, and I think it really is. Okay. I didn't. We've been saying that, but I thought, oh, is it really? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
You have beautiful nail beds.
Okay. Actually, I'm going to have Nate introduce our panel, and then we're going to do the Q&A discussion. Thank you so much for that film.
Hi, I'm the MC in training, and so I'm going to introduce the panel. Moderating the panel today is Christy Lemire from the Associated Press, and also on the panel is Steve Prokopy of Ain't It Cool News. So you want to come on out?
Get comfy. Hello, Ebertfest people. How are you? I'm so glad you're here. Roger, thank you for an excellent choice again.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you, Roger.
I'm so excited about my thumb. This is awesome.
What other festival gives you a thumb?
This is so cool.
A shiny gold thumb. I was sitting back there with you for a bit at the end of the movie and watching you watch the film and watch the crowd watch the film, and I wonder what that is like for you.
Oh, it's totally nerve-wracking. As each year goes by, all I can see is the flaws, and the merits become less and less. It's horrible.
You were hard on yourself, clearly.
It just looks at just the more you watch it, you're not focusing on the story. You're just focusing on the guy in the background that's doing bad extra acting, and the lighting's still terrible in that scene. And if I were George Lucas, and I don't want to be George Lucas, but if I could do my 30th anniversary fucking around and changing things, I would add. It drives me so crazy that that parking lot is not full in the tailgating scenes. There's a couple of empty spots, and I'm sure nobody cares or notices. But for example, that's when I'm watching that scene. That is all I see. That there's because we had to shoot it. Obviously, we didn't have permits to shoot it at the game, so we did the best we could. But I forget even why. But there were a few empty spaces, and it makes me crazy. And
So you snuck into the Meadowlands to shoot the parking lot scene.
Everything is in the most absolute technical sense legal, but there were. I'm not looking. I wanted the movie to be released.
Please remember that you're online right now. People could watch this that could maybe challenge you. Well,
I still don't feel safe. I still feel like the NFL is
still waiting for the call.
The NFL is going to come get me.
If I remember correctly, the Giants may or may not have been involved and approved the use of their logo in this.
Typically, I'm a very big sports fan, and when I watch a movie that is about sports and they use the fake teams, it just kills the movie for me. It gets me crazy. Some people don't care, any given Sunday, it's the Miami Sharks. It's obviously meant to be the Dolphins, but it's the Sharks. And for me, so much of what the movie's about is about the culture of sports, and the teams. The teams have the actual real teams and the actual colors have meaning to me. If they were wearing purple and blue jerseys and they were the New York Wizards, for me it just kills the movie. So I was committed to not ever. I was either going to make the movie with the real teams or not make the movie at all, and I took a very, very big calculated risk that so far So far, so good.
So
but,
far, Roger Goodell has not seen your
No
film.
lawsuits. Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, we got a few letters from them.
Oh,
They're
really?
they're very, very protective of their brand.
They
But
don't mess around, yeah.
no, they don't. But I checked with a lawyer, and the lawyer told me that actually, believe it or not, it is legal to do what I did. It's just that most people don't want to, take the chance.
Are you Jets or Giants?
Steelers. Steelers
But you're
fan,
from
yeah.
Long Island.
I am from Long Island, yeah. I grew up on Long Island, so I should be a Giants fan probably. But I came of football age in the late 70s. I got into football around 78, 79 when the steel curtain was the thing. And there just weren't, all my friends now who I grew up with are Jets and Giants fans, but I have no memory of any of them liking the Jets or Giants at the time, so I'm not quite sure when they switched allegiances.
Right.
But
If it's 70s, it's like Steelers and Cowboys, right?
right, yeah, 70s was still. I mean, there just weren't a lot of kids walking around with Richard Todd jerseys at my elementary school. He was the Jets' shitty quarterback.
So
In the late
obviously,
70s.
at the time when you made this film, Patton Oswalt had not really done a role like this. Certainly not a lead role like this.
No.
Why did you think he would be right for this part? Because the thing I focus on, I mean, you're looking at the flaws. The thing I'm looking at is his face, because he is doing things in this movie that clearly, like the fact that he got to do young adult was a result of him proving himself in this movie. And can you just talk about?
I didn't have any actual hard evidence that he could act well. I just kind of, it was really just a hunch, amazingly. I didn't audition him. I just thought, I think 90% of acting is casting, and if you cast the right person, you just buy it, as long as they're not terrible. And Patton I got lucky, and Patton happens to be a very, very fine dramatic actor, but I just thought he's right for the role, so it's just going to go. There's a lot less to overcome when you put someone in that role that just looks the part and looks right and are believable. It's a lot easier than casting, George Clooney or Brad Pitt and asking him to be a pudgy loner who lives with his mom. And Patton also, although he's not a sports fan at all, he has no interest in sports. In fact, he has an astonishingly little knowledge of sports. I believe he referred to touchdowns as points or runs. It was that bad, and it was frustrating because he's actually a brilliant comic improviser, and I wanted to just unleash this thoroughbred I had on my hands. But every time he tried to make sports talk come out of his mouth, he'd be like, "So how about that player who did that thing with the ball?" But while I knew he wasn't into sports. I felt very, very confident that Patton Oswalt would have a grip on the psychology of nerd obsession, which this is a form of. I think when we think of obsessive nerds, we think of Comic-Con and comic books and movies. There are movie geeks and D&D geeks and all sorts of geeks, but there are sports. There are obviously sports geeks, and they're not that different.
It's a small step to one.
Whether
to
you're
the right.
obsessing, it's the same. It's the same fire, different fuel. Whether you're obsessing over Ant-Man or Eli Manning, it's.
Well done.
Patton,
Right on the
thank you.
spot.
And Patton would be more likely to obsess over Ant-Man, but he took that psychology and was easily able to apply it to sports.
Did it take any convincing to get him to take on a dramatic role, especially one in which it was a territory he wasn't familiar with?
No, he to his credit, he just liked the script, and he read it, liked the script, totally got what I was going for. We had lunch. I met him for lunch somewhere when he was in New York at the time, and said, "I'd love for you to do this part. You don't have to audition. Just if you'd be willing to do it, I'd be honored to have you." And we talked a little bit about. I said the idea is I don't want to make this a comedy. A lot of people actually if you read the script, it could kind of go either way. It could either be a dark indie character-driven drama, or it could kind of be a Will Ferrell movie. There's a version of this that could actually remarkably easily become a kind of a comedy. But he got that I wanted to go for kind of that 70s taxi driver, sort of dark dark loner vibe, and he very quickly he's an incredible cinephile. My favorite movies are those sort of the late 70s, Saturday Night Fever and Taxi Driver and that stuff. That's Midnight Cowboy. And very quickly I realized that he knows way more about my own favorite thing than I do. I mean, he's unbelievable. You know, he just can talk for hours about Joe Don Baker's cockfight. Warren Oates, Warren Oates is cockfighter or something.
But I love that you compare it to Saturday Night Fever. I read that you
Saturday
see
Night
more
Fever.
of that than Taxi Driver in this character.
More Saturday Night Fever than Taxi Driver. Well, in that he's kind of, I see Tony Manero in Saturday Night Fever as being a guy who has this thing that makes him happy, and he doesn't really care what the rest of the world thinks, and he just, when he's out on that floor disco dancing, he just feels like the king of the world. I also another thing I love about Saturday Night Fever is the fact that if they remade that movie today, they totally would, he'd be the guy in Brooklyn, but then he'd go into Manhattan and go to the Studio 54 type, alpha, super cool nightclub, but he's the king of this really low rent Odyssey 2000. It's in Bay Ridge. In the movie, he goes to his local nightclub, so it kind of, and he's a happy guy. I mean, he's obviously there are things about his life that are very messed up, and he's got problems, but he's happy. Whereas I think Travis Bickle it'd be hard to say he's happy. So Saturday Night Fever, even though it's kind of feels more Taxi Driver-ish, especially with the way it ends, and there are aspects of it that are kind of Taxi Driver and King of Comedy also. But I always thought of Saturday Night Fever as kind of more the model, a guy who has this. He's a guy who works in a paint store, who just has this special thing that on the weekends, makes his life worthwhile. I don't think of the character as being particularly unhappy, which is.
No, and he learns nothing at the end, which I love.
Right, it's like.
No, it's not like, wow, I was an idiot. Look at me, I was dumb. It's like, wow, we're going to beat the Patriots.
It's going to be a great year, yeah. He's just psyched for the next season, yeah. All he wants to do, the whole movie, he just wants to get back to the place, his little world of, when the movie starts, he's just got his little world. He's got his job, he's got his calls, and he writes his calls, and he's happy. And everyone around him thinks he's unhappy. Usually in movies that are about quote-unquote losers, the person actually in some way is a loser or is unhappy. And I thought of Paul as being somebody who feels very self-fulfilled. It's just the world thinks that his fulfillment is pathetic or, misguided.
As much as this is not a comedy, there are some very funny things in it. I've actually on the DVD freeze framed the calls that he writes out and rehearses. Because,
he spells Philadelphia wrong.
Because he spells everything wrong. He spelled Constitution wrong. He spelled,
wow.
And I love that he even scripts out his laughter. Ha ha ha. It's and they're terrible phone calls on top of it.
They're deliberately incredibly banal and uninspired. There are different types of sports radio callers and different types of sports radio shows. I grew up listening to WFAN in New York, and that was kind of my inspiration for it. And on WFAN, you tend to get a very as sports radio goes, a higher level of dialogue where people are talking about, a manager's strategic decision and whatnot. But then you have more the Jim Rome type of call where it's more like WWF chest beating, where people are, it's just trash talking and it's kind of empty bluster. And that's more the type of thing I was going for. But for him, it's his art. This is his means of artistic creative expression, and it's his outlet for his creativity, and he takes it very seriously, but the calls are actually awful.
Right, and Jim Rome says, don't write out your takes because I will know it. But of course they all do that,
a lot of people,
right?
yeah. Well, there's a guy, Scott Farrell, who's does the voice in the movie, and he's an actual sports radio. He's on Sirius XM now, and he told me when I was recording him that there definitely are people who he knows for a fact there are a lot of sports callers who write it out beforehand and treat it like a monologue.
Did you? I know you did some improv with the actors in this, but did you ever find that because Pat, in addition to being a huge cinephile, he's also just a really smart guy? Did you ever find that his improvs became too smart for Paul? I mean, that you had to dial him back a little on the intelligence?
Yeah, at first, yeah, he would, because Patton is such a master at crafting these amazing, intricate sentences, comedy sentences. You know, his wording is so much a part of his brilliance and his act. So he definitely had to dumb down his vocabulary and make things less clever. There were times he would say things that, yeah, like you say, were very, very clever and funny, but ultimately were not consistent with the character.
I think his best line is on the radio when he says, "This thing is not a thing." That's a great line. Like I know exactly what he means, but that's how he would put something like that.
Yeah, he's not articulate, and when he goes off script, he usually doesn't, it just kind of wanders into a brick wall eventually.
But something that I loved about this film when I saw it, when I reviewed it initially and noticed again now, is that there is no judgment of him. There's no judgment of his fanaticism either before or after the attack. And it'd be easy to condescend toward him. It'd be easy to make fun of him, and you never do that. And I wonder, how did you achieve that?
Because I don't like those movies that are that mock or pity their main character, and I know this is at risk. Some people probably do feel that it does, and
I think.
And it toes that line, but I just feel a tremendous amount of affection for the character, and like I said, I just think he's a very happy, self-actualized guy. I would, if you asked a psychologist, what are the things that people need to be happy in life, I think he would actually, you'd be able to check off almost all of those boxes for him, more so than many, many quote-unquote successful people, doctors and lawyers and whatnot. I mean, he has a job, he has a sense of purpose, he has a place to go, he has a forum where he can be heard. He feels like he has a sense of community and belonging through the team. These are all the basic human needs, all the things one would need to be happy, and he really has them. It's just, it's just to the outside observer, he looks like just this pathetic schlub who, works in a parking garage and, lives vicariously through this football team, which he does, but...
How did you know that you had this in you? How did you know that you could direct?
I didn't. I had no I had no proof of Patton's acting. I had no actual proof of my directorial ability. I just no one wanted to make the movie, so I just said if it's going to exist, I just had no choice but to do it myself. It was originally, I wrote it many years before I made it. I shot it around 2008, and I wrote it probably 2002, maybe. It was I wrote it before The Wrestler, and actually Darren Aronofsky was flirting with directing this, and that's actually how I got hooked up with him for The Wrestler, was because he felt like they kind of exist in the same, the two movies could almost exist in the same universe, and they're both thematically about sports and being kind of on the outside looking in. Both Paul Alfiero and Randy the Ram are guys, obviously from different angles. One is a former athlete, and one is one is a has-been, and one is a never was. Mm-hmm. But they're both, you could see how they're kind of similar, I guess, hopefully. So I wrote it, and then it just kind of drifted from director to director over the course of the last decade. From 2000 to 2008, it just flirted with being made, but never actually got made, for many reasons. Probably most of which, primarily the NFL issue was probably the thing that kept it from existing. And then
People were afraid of toying with the actual logos.
There was no way
to,
there was no way to comfortably solve it for a major studio, even for a Fox Searchlight or a Focus Features. The problem is, any studio, if you follow the corporate ladder up high enough, that studio is owned by a parent company that has a relationship with the NFL that they're not willing to risk for a $200,000 little,
one of the things that you mentioned before, that a lot of your favorite films, especially about New York, were set in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe some of your favorite 70s films are set in New York. But one of the things that kind of adds to that 70s flavor is having Marsha Jean Kurtz play the mother, because she's kind of she's this quintessential character.
She was she's been in every Sidney Lumet movie, and she was in Dog Day Afternoon, and she was also in Inside Man.
Playing like the same Well, the same character with the same name, yeah.
She
A
does
bank
tend to
teller.
get typecast a bit, but she's
a
very
great
good at
bank
it.
teller.
I love her. She's very good.
She's such a great throwback. When I saw her, I was like, wow, look at her.
It was originally,
great.
I think it was originally going to be Louise Lasser. I talked to her, but I love, those Louise Lasser, Karen Black, 70s actresses. I just love them. Susie Tyrell, I have a soft spot for that.
So admit it, the real reason that you made this movie is because you think that Eagles fans are the scum of the earth, right?
They actually are.
They really are. No, I'm not even
Well, I
kidding.
chose the movie. That was not, everything is deliberate. I could have made the movie. I think I actually probably wanted Paul to be a Jets fan, and in reality, he is more. I don't want to get too deep into, Jets, Giants, and New York sports culture, but Jets are kind of the Mets. The Giants are the Yankees, and the Jets are the Mets. They're kind of the second banana team. And I just think Paul would kind of probably be, he fits the mold of a Jets fan a little more than a Giants fan. They're not the marquee glamour team in town. They're a little more blue collar, and I think he'd be a Jets fan. But then I thought Jets-Patriots as a rivalry just doesn't. The Giants-Eagles, they're in the same division. They play each other twice a year. And the thing that really cemented my decision to make it Giants-Eagles was the fact that Eagles fans, like you said, are really just the scum of the earth.
They have a jail.
There's
And
a jail
I've said
in their
that-
stadium. There's no
I've said that on stage in front of an audience in Philadelphia, and I've said that, and they cheer.
Plus, it wouldn't be realistic that a Jets
They're
game
proud of it. I
that
mean,
you
they wear it
couldn't-
like a badge of honor. They booed Santa Claus. That's
Of course.
the stories are legendary.
I say that with all due affection, of course. No, and plus it wouldn't be realistic that you couldn't get into a Jets game because
you know what?
because they don't sell out.
I do not take that as a low blow. I absolutely.
I'm not joking. I know a little bit about football.
No, Jets games don't. All that those little details matter to me. No, Jets games are a lot easier to get into than Giants games. They're not sold out.
So before you were a screenwriter, you were the editor of The Onion.
Yes.
You have Onion fans.
Yeah, this is Onion country.
It is.
Champaign-Urbana used to have an Onion. They used to have the Onion here. Do you remember that? Anybody? When it
What
was,
do they have?
well, the Onion was distributed.
Okay.
It was the first. We started in Madison, but thank you.
Other Big Ten schools. Yeah.
We started in Madison, but the second, even before Chicago, it opened in Champaign-Urbana, and it was a total disaster. And
What
they
happened?
folded. I think it involved the stealing of money. I don't remember. I mean, this was probably 1994. Somebody help me out if you remember. It was back when it was black and white. It was probably right when I got there. I got there in '94, and it didn't last very long. Somebody was stealing from us, as I faintly recall.
It sounds like an incredibly hard gig. To be funny on cue consistently all the time sounds really hard.
Yeah, but you have a system. I mean, it gets kind of mechanical and robotic. There definitely are weeks when I didn't feel inspired, but it's amazing how little difference there is between the weeks when you feel inspired and you feel like you're doing, the Lord's work, and this is gonna win a Pulitzer and a Peabody, and you put the paper out, and it's amazing. Sometimes those weeks people just kind of shrug and say, "Yeah, okay," and then there are weeks when you just think everyone's going to see through us, and this is the beginning of the end, and this week sucks. Oftentimes people would say that was hilarious. It seems like it should be very obvious. Quality it's just so subjective. It's
The eye of the beholder. Are you amazed still when legitimate news organizations pick up Onion stories and think they're real? It happens a lot.
I'm proud. I'm very proud of that. It's amazing that it does still happen, primarily in China. The Chinese seem to still not quite get the
I swear that Fox News has picked up some Onion
Fox
stories
News
and thought they
probably.
were
Yeah. It happens less than it used to, but it's pretty cool when it does.
And then how did you go from that to knowing that you wanted to be a screenwriter?
I never knew I wanted to be a screenwriter. My career has been a series of sort of accidents. There have been these sort of checkpoints where I kind of got bored of what I was doing and tried something else. The Onion, I was doing the Onion. I was at the Onion for 8-9 years, from 94 to 2003. And then around the time I started to get bored and think, boy, if I write one more goddamn headline, I'm going to go insane, I loved it, but I just wanted to use a different part of my brain. You go crazy after a while just seeing the world in headlines. So I said, I'd like to do something else. And then we were approached to write an Onion movie, which was my entry into screenwriting. We'd never written a movie before. David Zucker, who did Airplane and obviously all that stuff, he approached us to write a movie. He was a University of Wisconsin graduate and kind of saw us as the heirs to the Wisconsin, comedy throne, if there is such a thing. So, yeah.
Would that give you a little taste?
So
of what it's
I
like?
started doing it. Yeah, I just started doing it. It was just like how I started the Onion. You do it at night as a hobby. It's fun. You love it, and then the hobby becomes a job, and then the hobby becomes a career. So at the Onion, even there was about 5 or 6 year process where I had to wrap my head around the idea that this is my career and not just some weird detour. And then screenwriting, I wrote the Onion movie, and then I wrote a bunch of. I started writing comedies when I first started toying around with screenwriting. I was writing sort of things that maybe you'd hope Jack Black or Ben Stiller or Will Ferrell would star in, and I was pretty mediocre at it. I wasn't terrible, but I was just mediocre and didn't have anything particularly special or unique to say. And then big fan was my breakthrough script, because it was the first one that was not a full-out comedy. It was a drama, and it tapped into, like I mentioned before, a lot of the movies that I loved. That period from 1968, 69, I in my mind it starts with Midnight Cowboy, and then it goes through the 70s, and Pope of Greenwich Village is kind of which was 82, 83. That stretch of sort of beautiful loser New York City loner characters are just, for whatever reason, they're my absolute favorite movies.
But it seems
if
also.
you could call that a genre.
Pardon me, sorry. It seems also like there's a lot of the wrestler, as you mentioned, in this, both from a script perspective and also stylistically. Did you take a lot away from working with Darren Aronofsky?
I wrote this first, and then
The way it's shot, I mean, there's a lot of naturalism
Oh.
to the way it's shot, which is very reminiscent of the wrestler, like long tracking shots following.
I think it's just the
behind him.
style. I mean, it's the style I like, and it seems to be the style that was suited to this movie. And it's also, I didn't have it in the budget for elaborate cranes and dollies, so you do your intimate handheld kind of thing instead. That's just it. It's the style I like, and it's probably in the script, and then it just kind of comes out. I think you could kind of feel if a script is written well, you can kind of picture it, or at least picture roughly the style it's going to be. It wasn't going to be like a flashy Goodfellas, Boogie Nights, tracking shots and amazing cinema. I still don't know how to do that stuff, which is probably the main problem. But this felt like the right intimate kind of style to shoot it.
You touched on it a little bit before, but I did want to talk a little bit about the nature of fandom in general, because and I said this to you guys, if you are craving to see a Q&A with Patton Oswalt about this movie, if you buy the DVD or rent the DVD, Robert and Patton and I did something at the Music Box a couple years ago when the film opened, and you can watch that. But I brought this up then, that my favorite scene in the movie is when Paul first approaches Quantrell in the strip club, because it's the look on his face that is a look I have seen 100 times when someone goes up to somebody famous or someone that's their hero and approaches them, because they've dreamed this moment 1,000 times in their head, and they've already sort of had it and are telling it to their friends, even though it hasn't happened yet. They're already like writing the story in their head of meeting this person finally, and that's a look that's it's like scary, it's exciting, it's sad a little bit. But tell me, like, what about that kind of fan interests you so much?
Well, I think you just answered the question. That was
Nice
fantastic. What about that kind of fan interests me? I don't know. Is that a good answer? Yes. To approach your hero is so it's so thrilling, and I think of it as being more terrifying than exciting. I think Paul just I actually don't think he ever imagined that he was ever going to meet Quantrell Bishop. I think if you're a guy who's watching the Giants, it's amazing. I mean, geographically, he's only probably he spends his entire life only 10 miles away from. He lives in Staten Island, just across the river from Manhattan, and he spends his whole life within a 10-mile radius of Quantrell. But I think it's just so far off his radar. He doesn't think he's ever gonna. I don't think it ever occurred to him that I'm going to cross paths with him. And when he goes into Manhattan, he's just so bewildered. He clearly doesn't. He clearly never goes to Manhattan. He doesn't even know how the sodas are $7 there, and the parking is confusing, and so I think he's totally outside of his he's not on his turf, even though he's still in New York. It's just fascinating to me, these pockets of within one city. I mean, it's a huge city, but within one city to have so many different subcultures and so many different worlds happening at the same time. I don't think Paul thinks he's ever gonna meet Quantrell.
What do the folks of Staten Island think of this movie?
I'm
you
not
heard?
sure they've seen it. I don't know. We had played there for about a week.
Oh, did it? It played
Yeah.
in Staten Island? Oh, good.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have. I don't think I think they like it. I think they think it's cool, and it was a great place to shoot. And I've only said wonderful things about Staten Island. I couldn't have made this movie, I don't think, in any other borough. They just really leave you alone there. The cops all live in Staten Island, so they don't really want to be bothered when they're off duty.
Right.
So they just leave you alone. No permits. It was great.
We should open it up to questions. I think you guys all have questions. From what I understand, the delightful microphone wranglers will come to you. So I'm not going to try to
Put your
shepherd
hands
this
up
thing anymore because
and
I
wait
suck
for a
at
microphone
this.
to come to you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm a professor since 1988 here, but my first 29 years were in Philadelphia, and I grew up in a low-income area of Philadelphia, and for me, education was an escape from this film rang so true to me, and I felt at a very emotional level. And in some sense, I have many friends who I think are still trapped in this mindset. So I saw the film as about meaning and identity, and for me, it was a really powerful film. My question is, it rang so true to me, I was wondering, did you interview people from New York and Philadelphia and sports fans and get their input, because it captured so much of my experience growing up?
Thank you. I didn't really do any research for it. Well, actually, I did and I didn't. I spent my entire childhood researching it without really knowing it. As I may have mentioned, I grew up on Long Island, and I listened obsessively to sports radio at the time. WFAN came on the air sometime in the early or mid '80s. It was the first and only sports. It's the first sports radio station in America, and it was. I remember when it came on. It was incredibly exciting, and I was in my early teenage years, and I just listened every night before going to bed. I would stay up way past my bedtime in bed under the covers with the lights out, just listening to WFAN. From maybe 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. I would listen to WFAN, and I would hear these. I was in my sheltered suburban. I grew up middle class Jewish Long Island suburb, very typical kind of upbringing, and I would listen to the WFAN, and I would hear these, Murray from Flushing and Joe from Rego Park, and just all these different far-off corners of my own city that somehow felt very, very exotic and strange to me. Growing up on Long Island, I didn't go to Brooklyn, and I didn't go to New Jersey or Yonkers or any of these other places, and the accents were just strange to me, and I didn't think of them as movie characters, but in retrospect, I must have, on some level, connected to them the way you do to a movie character, and just hearing their voices, and they all had such crazy personalities, and you couldn't help but wonder where they were calling from and what their bedroom looked like and what their lives were like, and you got to know them. There was an intimacy because you'd have regular callers. Doris from there was a woman, Doris from, I forget where she was from, Bayside maybe. She actually got her obituary in the New York Times just by virtue of being such a prominent personality on the radio. so I just was fascinated by these people, and I just loved listening to them and hearing their voices. And part of it was just hearing them talk about sports, but part of it was just kind of hearing them as characters. And then later, when I kind of came of age, my sports coming of age was when I was, maybe 12 or something. But my movie coming of age was later, when I was maybe 17 or 18, was when when cinephilia blossomed in me, and the movies that I was attracted to. I wasn't really thinking about this at the time, but the movies I was attracted to were movies that were about people like the people that I would hear on WFAN. They were always, Ratso Rizzo, or like I said, Tony Manero, or Charlie in Pope of Greenwich Village. They're all kind of the kinds of people who would call a radio station, and they were the kinds of people I would see in the upper deck at Mets games, and I don't know, I was just attracted to it. So I see the movie as a fusion of my kind of love of Scorsese, and my love of WFAN. It's a weird combination.
In the balcony, you left.
Hey, Robert. Thanks for coming. I think he's easy to overlook because Patton is so good, but I think the performance and the casting of Michael Rappaport is like 100% pitch perfect. Did you have him in mind when you were writing the script, and how did you come to cast him?
I actually didn't have him in mind. The guy I actually really wanted for it was Artie Lang. I don't know if any of you know him. I'm a huge Howard Stern fan, and I don't know how much of a presence he has here, but Artie Lang was on the show at the time, and I just thought he, to me, was what I pictured when I was writing it, just this big behemoth asshole bully. And then I just couldn't track him down. I couldn't get him on the phone. He's kind of a notoriously crazy guy, and eventually I was really committed to getting him, and I had this image in my head that I was going to land him, even if it was at the last minute. And then I realized, okay, we're starting to shoot, and I don't have an actor. So then Michael Rappaport was my sort of clear second choice, and he was amazing. But yeah, truthfully, Artie Lang was the guy I wanted for that.
And Michael's actually really nice. I mean, he is that enthusiastic.
Oh, and then
he's that ebullient.
Artie OD'd
Right, and
in
that was
the
the end
middle
of
of the shoot. So I was actually grateful that I didn't
Michael
have a
Rappaport's
heroin
solid.
overdose on my hands during. That would have complicated
left.
things.
To your left.
So a month ago, I deposited my thesis on NFL players and the use of Twitter through social capital theory. And during the course of my research, I looked at the performative context.
Did you repeat the title of your thesis?
Hash marks and hashtags the NFL player and Twitter through this lens of social capital theory.
Holy shit! I already know I'm not going to be able to answer this question. But go ahead.
So during the course of my research, I looked at how the players' use of Twitter and their identification with the fans and their conversations, and basically all online communication is performative. And in fact, there's a lot of research that says fan identity is performative. You go out and you buy the goods, you buy the tickets, you actually have no identification other than a consumerist approach to whatever you're a fan of. And here we have a guy who can barely afford his $200 jersey and can't get into the game, but isn't really aware of the performative nature of it, because at the end, I think my favorite line of the film is...
Performative?
Performative.
I don't know what that means. Or I don't know what you mean by that.
To show that you're a fan, how you show you're a fan, you perform this identity. And so what I'm getting to is at the end when Paul says, you don't have to be so mean. Not understanding that this entire time, every time he writes something out, he's doing a performance. He's performing an identity as a Giants fan. Not that you thought about this, but did you sort of think about the performative aspect of what it takes to be a fan when you shot the movie?
Well, I'm thinking about it right now. Well, I think fans Duh. He's smarter than me.
Next question that won't stump us.
Oh man, I had an answer like halfway through your question. I had an answer, and now I'm shit. Give me a second.
Can someone dumbass the next question?
I thought he. What was I gonna say? I actually was gonna.
Let's get to a different question.
No, but it's actually I'm just my head is swimming, but I actually like the question. I just. Did I think about what it takes to be a fan? Well, I think a fan identifies with I think a fan feels a personal connection with the players much more. Players like to talk about how much they love their fans, but they kind of hate their fans, I think, or they don't really want to. They like their fans in theory, but not in practice. They love the concept of fans, and they love the concept of seeing a sea of faceless, admirers in a 100,000 seat stadium. But I think most of them would be kind of disgusted and repulsed and feel very incredibly awkward actually face to face with their average fan. Yeah. Let me think. I had something smart to say about this. I'm completely. All right. Anyway, I guess I'll come back to it if I think of it. But
You've stumped us.
yeah.
Next question, please. And we
From
have
the
to bail
balcony
pretty
to
soon, I
your
think.
left.
Hello. To my left.
I feel like I should be writing out my question on a notebook right now. First off, thanks so much for the shout out to the Wisconsin Comedy Throne, because
Oh,
it's just a hotbed of activity.
was that you who said woo?
Yeah,
Okay. I heard that.
so represent. That was awesome to hear you talk about the Stern Show, because I'm not a Howard Stern fan, but my husband here is, and I didn't understand the concept of the show until we got together, because it seems like it's such a culture. It's like a male soap opera thing where people are, you're like, oh, this is what Robin said today, or today this guy did this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the same callers, it's the same kind of concept. And as somebody from the Midwest, I just did not understand that. Is that something aside from like the fan stuff that you were tapping into, or is it something that you've seen in other parts of the country? Because it was still really relatable, but
It's not. I mean, the Stern Show is kind of its own subculture the way sports fandom is. I don't know that I made an explicit link between the two in my head when I was writing it, but I think it holds kind of the same appeal of these people who are not actually a part of your lives. You feel like you're a part of their lives. I remember what it was. You were talking about you didn't have to be so. When you said you didn't have to be so mean, I don't know that I was trying to address this whole performative thing, or maybe I was, but I don't know the word. But I was. I think that culture is very. That sports talk culture and internet culture is just very, very mean because of its anonymity. If you've ever any message board on any website you go to, when you read the comments, read. I'm sure you've read comments sections on websites, and they're always just incredibly, incredibly vicious and full of that kind of bluster. I didn't make Paul somebody who was. I wanted to make him kind of pre-internet. I didn't make him and a guy who has the web even really. He has to borrow his friend's internet, but he definitely. But that culture of vitriol and aggression, and the way male aggression is unleashed by virtue of the anonymity, because that's part of why Paul feels like such a man on the radio, is because you only hear his voice. You don't have to. Nobody sees that he's sitting in his underwear and he's kind of chubby and short. So I think sports fandom, like many other forms of fandom, is an outlet for men to feel more manly, and a lot of times, usually that crosses over into something more vicious and mean, and he's very much a part of that. But then when it's like I can dish it out, but I can't take it. So it was very hurtful to him. Yeah.
We have one more really quick one, and we have to bail.
Right here to your left.
Yeah. How did it feel to act in your own movie?
And would you ever consider, do you have acting ambitions, or
no.
was it just cost saving?
I just needed a body. No, I'm reporter number 2 in one of those scenes toward the end. I don't know. I just thought it'd be cool to throw myself in there, and I literally needed somebody, and I didn't have anybody on set. But no, I know I'm a shitty actor.
That's a great way to end. Thank you guys all so much.
Thank
You
you.
are
Thank you.
tremendous. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much. Thank you.